Oh, that was horrible. One more time. There we go. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Sacred and Profane podcast. I'm your host, Nephtara Grace. I've got Sharon Marie Scott here with me, and we're going to start as we usually do by reminding you that this conversation is for those of you who are 18 years old or older. Every conversation of the Sacred and Profane podcast is intended to trigger you into going within and discovering what's true for you. This episode is no different. Okay. So if you're not 18, we're going to ask you to go find another podcast to listen to. And also, if you are going to stick around and listen to what we're talking about today, please be emotionally mature. Be ready to bring yourself forward to the conversation and listen for where you can discover something new for your life and what we're talking about. Okay. So, you know how we like to do around here? We have these wonderful rooms. I've got Wunjo for joy and kinship. I love this. This room's been coming out a lot lately in my tarot reading. It's really giving the I'm really getting it as the 2026 vibe. Like there's an opportunity for us to like release that powerfully and joyously into this next chapter. Followed by Now These. This is Now These is a funny room for me. You can't see it because I got the sun with me. It's friction, it's challenge, but it's also a shadow. It's like when you need something, you actually need it. It's not a want, it's not a desire, it's what you need. Okay. And then Gibbo, this is divine interaction. It's like God shows up or the divine shows up or Goddess shows up and says, "What you doing? I want to play too." We have 5 rooms. Othila, the ancestors are here, which I love. When I have Othila and Gibbo together, you know it's going to be a good time. And that's pure. Ooh, this is delicious. So we had this, I think the last time we had Sharon here. And this is again the cosmic cauldron of creation, or the Norse thought of it, a dice cup. A roll of the dice. You don't know what's going to happen. It actually stands for divination or luck. All right. So that's what's holding the container. And I got to tell you, I'm feeling that. I'm really feeling like whatever comes out of this conversation in this episode, it's actually what we need to powerfully move forward into 2026. So once again, it's an honor to be here with
Mm,
Sharon Marie Scott. Just I've
mm.
introduced you before. You know, the promos are out there, so I'm not going to waste any time saying more. Sharon, what are we talking about?
Yeah. Well, we had such a juicy conversation the last time I
Yes.
was here, and certainly makes me eager for more. I think I'd love to talk about, some really some more embodied
Mm,
experiences. I'd love to talk about perhaps yours and my remembrances of these other
mm,
lifetimes where we've taught these sacred erotic mysteries before. And I would love to continue the conversation from last time with regards to the other books that are expected in this 6-book codex that we spoke about, and more specifically books 3 through 6, which are really about the Hieros Gamos journey, or the sacred union
mm.
journey. And then you were just telling me that that's been also a live topic for you recently. So I think maybe that
Yeah,
would be a really juicy
yeah.
direction to go in.
Let's get it. Let's get it. So, like this sacred union, what is that
Yeah.
about? Because I've been talking to people about the divine union within and the sacred union. These words are out there, and of course, we're hearing these words and seeing this, and this conversation is coming up as the patriarchy is dissolving, as we're watching these traditional constructs around how we connect, how we couple fall apart. So, tell us about the sacred union.
Yeah. It's it's a phrase that I have only been familiar with maybe for 2 years. And
Mm,
I remember, like, I'm having the embodied memory of seeing the words, reading
mm,
them for the first time, and having again what I now recognize as like that moment of remembrance. Like the words really hit me, even though I didn't know what they meant. There was something about them that I knew was significant for me, and had no
mhm,
idea, of course, that here 2 years later, I'm writing what will be like my life's opus in these 6 books. So the books 3 through 6, they're called the Temple of I, the Temple of Them, the Temple of Us,
mm,
and the Temple of All. And that's the
mm,
journey. So the journey of sacred union, or sacred marriage, like, when I first heard it, I could feel that the definition I was getting wasn't quite right, and because it was being interpreted too literally as like sacred union between one person and another, and that
mm,
person traditionally being heterosexual, and, you know, a guy and a girl. And that was the simplicity of the way people were applying the phrase. And I could feel that there was more depth to it than that. And of course, through these remembrances I had of these past life temple experiences of being high priestess or being a sexual high priestess, you know, I realized that there was more depth to the journey itself. And of course, the journey starts with the sacred union within, the sacred union with self. And so the third book will be called The Temple of I. And it's going to introduce a new archetypal system. I admit I won't remember whether we spoke about archetypes the last time I was on here, but we have archetypes were important to me throughout my whole life, even before I became a writer, and where archetypes take on a kind of a different context in terms of using archetypes to create characters for stories. But so archetypes, and the one that stands out to me is the maiden mother crone. Are you familiar with that set of archetypes?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I want to say about a year ago, I wrote an article because I was realizing that even with the archetypes that we have that have been ingrained in our cultures for, you know, centuries, that even things like the maiden mother crone archetype had been stripped away of their eroticism and sanitized.
Yeah.
So like maiden comes across as this like innocent girl who doesn't know anything and is like, you know, that somehow we should sort of protect her from the real world. There's like a sensibility around that. But when you go to re-eroticize her, she's a juicy, excited, you know, ready to literally like taste all of life. It's almost like she wants to put all of life in her mouth. She's salivating at experiencing what there is and what she doesn't already know. It's like, that's just like one example. And then the mother, you know, the mother's not this martyr who sacrifices herself until she disappears. She's juicy and she feeds life, right? She's the sustenance of life. And then the crone, you know, like I'm a crone. I'm in my 50s. And I want to be the new model for the crone, you know, like we're the ones that you want to be coming to ask about, like, you know, the brides on their wedding night, like we're the ones that should be the wise women that are giving her counsel months in advance of that wedding, you know, like you want to be coming with us. We are not the dried up hags that a lot of the literature and the art depict us as. We are the juicy wise women that you want to be learning from. So so in the context of the Temple of I, this third book, I'm creating a brand new archetypal system, and they will have no gender. So instead of like king or queen as archetypes, it'll be a sovereign archetype. Because why? Why separate them in their genders when the energetic current is really the same? And then there'll also be no light and no dark. So there's no aspects that feel like prim and proper and then improper. It'll be you're either distorted or you're out of coherence with that current, or you're in coherence with the current. And then I have exercises that also help you identify where you are, and then exercises to bring you back into coherence on the archetypes. So the third book, Temple of I, is about that. So I don't know if you want me to stop there, if you want to ask me anything, or I can, you know, go on with the rest of the Sacred Union journey.
Well, let's take a moment to unpack what you just shared, because there's so much juicy there. There's juicy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maiden Mother Crone is one of my
Juicy's
favorite
the point.
Juicy's the point, right?
Bringing the juicy back. Yeah.
Yeah. So Maiden Mother Crone, one of my favorite archetypes, for so many reasons. And I myself am in my crone phase, but I'm still a mother. And it's a conversation I have with Spirit often, like, what is this? And Spirit says, literally, word for word, we are reclaiming the crone. We are reclaiming the crone. And I got in my own studies, the crone was separated on purpose because of the fierce wisdom we bring. As you point to with the maiden, we've made her this small piece that we have to protect. In doing so, we've left that maiden archetype vulnerable to predators. And we're really dealing with this right now in the world when we talk about predators, when we talk about, what's that other keyword, pedophilia. I mean, the world is up in arms about this. But it is directly connected to how we've taken the maiden, cut her off from the mother and the crone, and put her over here and said, oh, well,
And from
she
her
fits
own
that way,
eroticism.
right? Well, because we, as we did talk about this in the last episode, a little bit, but not as much as I think we will in this one. We have decided who gets to have pleasure and who doesn't get to have pleasure. And one of the things I love about your pleasure renaissance is you bring back the truth that pleasure is. Full stop. Pleasure just is. It's not for this or for that. And no. Pleasure is, right? And in our personal conversations, we've talked about women who have these erotic births, like they get to have pleasure when they're having babies. There's so many different ways we can experience pleasure that modern society says, no, it's not for that. It's not for that. It's only for this.
Yep.
And the maiden is definitely one of those places, right? And I think we are struggling with this conversation in particular because of how we have broken apart this archetype. And then the mother. As a mother, I attest to what you're saying. Mothers are some of the juiciest women on the planet. Let me tell you, because to become a mother, to go from maiden to mother, it is to be filled with life, to be filled with life-giving sustenance, that milk, right? Your whole body kind of rounds out and becomes that. You look like the fertility goddess, and that's it. And now sometimes it's not comfortable, but you have all these fluids moving through you and pouring out of you. And there's nothing, if you ask me, there's nothing sexier than mother. But I didn't grow up thinking that because I did grow up in the States. And so I really was brainwashed and programmed that only maidens could be sexy. Isn't that interesting? I was
Mm.
programmed that maidens
Mm.
could be sexy, but they weren't allowed to have sex. And we'll have to keep dealing with that. And that's a part of what we're deconstructing here, right? It's like, wait a minute. How can they be sexy, but they're not allowed to have sex? But we love to dress maidens up. Look, I used to work for Abercrombie and Fitch. I know I can hear the booze in the background. It was a long time ago, you guys. And I was a model, but that is a company that has no problem capitalizing and profiting off of that maiden archetype, a hyper sexualized maiden archetype, right? And I won't tell you stories of what it looked like for mothers to bring their daughters into the stores. It's just a psychological mess, right? But
Mm.
that brings us to Crone. Brings us to Crone. We love to say that once a woman hits a certain age, she's no longer viable. And we watched religion play a huge part in this, where they intentionally took our crone goddesses and put them way over there and said, no, we only have this goddess over here. These are the ones you can have. You can have these maiden goddesses. Oh, there's only goddesses of birth. We don't talk about the goddesses of death. Why not? Why wouldn't we? There's such a power there. And again, when I began to learn, because when you hit the crone phase, you don't give a fuck anymore. And society can tell you what it wants to, and you're like, but I'm going to do this anyway. And the power that gives, the power that's available now, when you can stand
Yeah.
in your own sovereignty, is why it was disconnected, deconstructed. And so to bring it all back together, okay, that's one. And love, as the shadow queen, I stand on the edge of light and dark. So to
And
create a realm,
just the sheer accumulation for the crone of
yeah,
wisdom and experience and potency in terms of actual creation energy too. Just like
yeah,
I get it. I get why we freaked them out, you know?
yep, yeah. Well, and look, can you imagine having a maiden connected to a crone? Can you imagine?
Yeah,
It's like it gives me
imagine them learning. Yeah, so young.
yep,
Oh.
it gives women who runs with the wolves, but at 18, right?
Yeah,
Imagine
you
me
know,
running with the wolves at 18.
yeah, this actually does connect back to the pleasure renaissance movement that we touched upon in the last one, because as I move through the pillars and the initiatives, in the long-term picture, because this is a decades long global movement that will take the rest of my
Yeah,
life to execute.
yeah,
But part of that
yeah,
movement will be, to teach young women how to be in touch with their erotic bodies in a way that we
yeah,
can't fathom right now. That right now it would,
yeah,
like, you'd literally clutch your pearls at the thought of
yeah,
what I'm
yeah,
suggesting. But
yes,
that is on the horizon, and there'll be people, like, it's not an enthusiastic thing for me to teach myself, but I know people
yeah,
who want to.
yes. Look, that's how the universe brought us together, right? So I have a daughter. I have two kids who are Scorpios. Okay, 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I was
Okay.
clear.
Even I know nothing about astrology, and yet I know even about the
Like,
Scorpios.
right?
Well,
And my daughter was born stunningly gorgeous. Okay. And then thanks to her genetics, her body is, you guys, it's unreal. And as a mother, I'm looking at my daughter like, oof, oof. And as a Scorpio, she's naturally connected to her genitals. She's naturally connected to her sacral, and she has no problem with physical touch. This is as a little kid. Okay. So I've seen my daughter touch grown men and have grown men go, ooh, she touched me. I don't know what to do. I'm so uncomfortable. I'm like, first off, she's
yeah.
a kid, calm down. She didn't know. She didn't know. And this is who she is. It She became almost instantly my inspiration for the work that I do in this conversation because how it
Mm,
occurred to me is the world has no space for her because she was born this way and there's nothing wrong with her. So as her mom, I have the privilege and the responsibility of creating space for my daughter to arise inside of, right? I'm committed. She's 9 now, and she's very in touch with her body, very in tune. And if I have anything to do with it, that will never change. She'll get to continue to evolve in a world inside of a conversation where young women, women of any age, women of all ages, are empowered around their body, empowered around physical touch, empowered around intimacy, empowered around connection, authentic connection, right? It's huge. It's huge. And the way she, if I let her pick out her own clothes, you know what she thinks is cute? Anything that shows her belly is cute. She likes it. She was born that way. And what am I gonna? I'm not gonna be what I was raised with. No, cover it. No, don't be who you are. No, be who you are. Let's just make your
yeah. Let
environment
the world catch up.
safe. Yeah, right. So that, and then I'm really fascinated with you shared with me before uh dismantling and then creating new archetypes that don't center around light and dark. Again, as a gray, as a line walker, I'm a habitual line stepper. That's what I call myself. That's where I live. I live in the both and neither or, right? And so I get really hyped, really excited, like, yes, bring that on. Where I'm standing, that's the future. That's the future. This
Yeah.
choosing to
My
recognize,
hope is that these.
go.
Go ahead. You said something about recognize.
Oh, choosing to recognize that when we choose light or dark, we're limiting ourselves and we're cutting off what's possible, including our sovereign power. I know that's a new conversation for people, but it's accurate. When we say, "Oh, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to do that," we're actually breaking our sovereignty apart. We're taking our agency and putting part of it in the drawer and saying, "No, I don't want to have agency over that." Well, okay, well that's a whole part of life that you're saying you're not going to powerfully live. You're not going to powerfully meet that part of yourself. It's an entire part of
Yes.
yourself you're not going to enjoy. Why would you do that?
Yeah. Did we have a conversation? I'm assuming not, but have you seen Handmaid's Tale? Have you seen that series?
I No, but I've read the book. I'm a book reader.
Okay, so and I
But
had not read the book, but I had known how potent and
mm,
heavy the TV
mm,
series was. And so
mm,
it's 6 seasons. I hadn't seen it, but I decided, I want let's say like 3 or 4 months ago, I decided to binge watch the 6 seasons. And I was like,
wow.
okay, so I'm relatively familiar with the heaviness of the material.
Yeah.
How am I going to approach the watching of this? And because
Mm,
of my own background and my own empathy in watching these
mm-hmm,
episodes and stuff like that, so I decided that it was going to be a spiritual exercise, and so
mm,
that when I watched the show, I I kept one level of camera pulled back. So I was constantly
mm,
aware of monitoring my own internal experience of the show. And I decided that I was going to essentially like integrate every character. So I could say
mm,
with great love to myself that I am as evil as the most
mm,
evil character depicted
uh,
in the TV show, and I am as
mm,
heroic as the most heroic version
Yeah.
character of the TV show. And it gave me both that one level of filter that was helpful to
Yeah.
me to not allow my natural empathy to go too far and like really get lost
Yeah.
in the sadness or whatever the emotions that were being evoked were. But I also had this opportunity to admit freely out loud,
Mm.
like, that's me, that's me, that's me. I'm capable
Yeah.
of any one of those things,
Yeah.
any one of those acts, good or bad, whatever we're calling that. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
capable of
Mm-hmm.
every one of those acts, especially given the same circumstances and this pressure cooker that the show or the story itself develops. So that was quite an like a natural gauntlet or ordeal that I put myself
Mm.
through in watching it.
Mm. Oh, so yes, thank you. Thank you for that. I love that you shared that the way you did. A principle that I've learned is you can't possibly know how good you are until you reckon with how bad you are. And that's one that set me free years ago because I'm an eldest daughter. So I was born to be the good girl. I was groomed to be the good girl. And so it didn't matter what I did, I was always going to be bad. If that makes sense. If you're a good girl, you're always a
Mm,
bad girl. Right? And if
mm,
you're a bad girl, you're always trying to figure out how to be good. And so when I got a hold of that principle, like you'll never be good until you can get how bad you are. And I did something similar. I go, well, let me look at all the areas that I think I'm good at or good in, and let me look at everything that I think I'm bad at or bad in. And it wasn't long before the lines blurred, beautifully blurry lines of what's good and bad internally and around me. And almost
yeah,
overnight, I became a very polarizing personality because people would say things around me and expect some type of reaction. And I go, "Yeah." And they go, wait, no, that was wrong. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, no, you have to, no,
right.
hold on. Because if I were in that situation, I can't say that I wouldn't have done the same thing. It's easy to
Yes.
sit outside of life or sit in the bleachers or sit in the stands or sit in the audience and make a judgment call about what's happening on the court or in reality. When what I love about the Pleasure Renaissance, like we said at the beginning, it's an invitation to play fully in your life. Pleasure is come play, come play. And sometimes you might find yourself in situations that others deem bad, but you could explore. And you might find yourself in situations someone might go, oh, that's a great option, but there's still an opportunity to explore. We talked about the yin yang. There is no all good or all bad, right? And so
Yeah.
allowing those lines to blur and allowing ourselves to play and then cultivating the courage to explore pleasure, regardless of where we find ourselves, is what really lights
Yeah.
me up.
I'm sure we talked about, I'm sorry. Sometimes our voices are overlapping and there's a little bit of lag on my side. So if I talk over you, it's not my intention. But
Okay.
I was thinking of, yeah, I think we probably touched on how pleasure is not the same as safety an
Mhm.
absence of suffering. And I'd say that if I had like the biggest personal journey that I have gone on in this last 20 months, or the biggest leap I've taken in terms of my transcendence, was in transcending victim consciousness or
Mhm.
separation consciousness, and realizing
Mhm. Mhm.
that I'm not a victim of anyone except the stories that I make up. And these are I want to say sophisticated, but that like has a value judgment. Like these are
Mhm.
very spiritually advanced conversations where you can talk about the fact that the things that we think of as like the most heinous acts that one could make against another, that still, even at that point, when your lens is pulled back wide enough and you're looking down at why
Mhm.
we're here and what we're meant to learn from ourselves and from each other, that even those, let's say, most heinous acts really only had that meaning because we give it that meaning, and that
Right.
and that we and that we never die anyway. Again, not excuses, and they're very challenging conversations to have, but boy,
Mhm.
it's a courageous conversation to
Yeah.
be having today.
Yes. You know, you and I opened this up a little bit in our personal conversations before recording the first episode. And so I'm going to tiptoe gently through it just a little bit because it wants to be opened. I don't think we're going to unpack it, but it wants to be open. And it's a sacred and profane podcast. So I gave my trigger warning. Let's get it. You know, something that people who have experienced SA, right, or being assaulted, one of the biggest psychological challenges they have is reconciling their experience of pleasure at the hands of their attacker inside of a conversation called "This is wrong." And this psychological dissonance occurs no matter what age, and I don't like the word victim, right? Uh, we talked about this where victim is it's tough for me to say. It's not my, I don't do it well, so I'm like, it's well. But people who've been attacked or have been on the receiving end of unwanted force or touch, this is huge, no matter how old they are. They have to deal with this is wrong, but my body said something different. Does that make me wrong? And the world that comes with that, and as you point to, at some point, if you're fortunate, you've been through this and you're fortunate, you get to a place where you can release and let go and go, you know what? I am in my body. My body is my fiercest ally, and my body had an experience separate from the one my mind was having. And I live in a world that's telling me that the experience I had was wrong. And so the reconciliation of my truth is mine and mine alone. There is no one who can tell me about this experience but me. There's no one who can judge this experience but me. And given that we live, especially in the States, in a container where if you're a feminine who's had this experience, you are met with a lot of resistance to sharing your story. Okay. And so I think it takes, as you're pointing to, immense courage to sit in that space and continue to unpack. Yeah, I didn't like what happened. That didn't feel good, but I still had something activated down here in my root chakra that I can identify as pleasure. I mean, what in the world? And so I love the idea that continuing to explore this conversation is actually going to help free a lot of men and women around the world when it comes to their experience of being assaulted. Because this is something people really struggle with. You know, wait a minute. Pleasure means everything is
I
good.
remember
No, we're done.
I remember in my own journey, before my spiritual awakening, and very early in terms of me reclaiming my erotic identity, there was an author named Nancy Friday who wrote a book called My Secret Garden. And it was the first time that a clinician of some sort, a therapist, had collected real people's sexual fantasies. And she put them in she put the most common ones in the book. So not only was I reading like somebody's fantasy, but I was reading in some ways an amalgamation or a compilation of the most common fantasies, sexual fantasies. And I remember even the very first one, because I know we spoke about some of my own history with sexual abuse and incest on the first recording, and that left me with a kink or an arousal pattern imprint for taboo relationships and taboo sexual encounter. And so I remember when I picked up Nancy Friday's book, and I think it was even the first story in the book, which I believe, if I'm remembering right, was like it was a football stadium. And you're just one in the crowd at the football stadium, you're watching the football game, and then someone from behind you begins to touch you erotically, and then ultimately sort of takes you from behind. And you never see them. It's an anonymous face, but it's giving you this pleasure that you haven't specifically had to ask for. And I don't mean you didn't ask for it like you didn't want it. You didn't have to ask for it. They just gave you, like in this sort of almost primal animalistic anonymous way, they gave you that thing that you were wanting. And I remember it so viscerally, even as I'm talking about it, thinking, my goodness, other people have fantasies like this. Other people have fantasies like mine. And it was such an unlock for me to feel like I'm not the only one. I'm not so fucked up. I'm not so deviant that I am an outlier, and that there are other people that have similar desires as me.
Yeah. Yes. So, you know, for me, that brings us around to temple talk. So I have this memory, I have a lot of memories of temple, for those of you who are like, temple, what is this? So before patriarchy, we were a matriarchal society. We didn't have churches, we had temples. We had places where they were common spaces, but they were temples, they were places of worship. Okay. And it's where we both gathered to celebrate and commune, but it was also where we brought our challenges to be healed, to be shared, to be resolved by someone who had perhaps a deeper connection to the divine than we felt like we had. Right? So back in temple culture, not only was eroticism and sexuality everyday life because we were very agrarian. Okay, so when you're living off the land and you're, whelping cows and you got sheep running around and baby pigs are being born, you're just in it up to your elbows. All right. I've been on the farm a lot. In it up to your elbows in eroticism, whether you want to admit it or not. Okay. But back then we were a little bit freer as well. We were still sleeping not that far from our animals. Our animals were our currency. Our livestock was what kept us fed and also what we traded. And so the sense of embodiment, physical touch and physical intimacy was very real. We were very connected to the earth, to each other, and to anything that had a pulse, a heartbeat, anything that was warm. We understood that. We could then go to a temple and say, I want to have a baby, and my wife and I have tried, and it's not working. Can you help us? And there would be a priestess there who would take that man's offering and say, yes, come lie with me. Come take this divine energy from me. Take it home to your wife, and they would conceive. And they would bring that baby back to the temple and either say, hey, we got what we wanted. Would you like this baby for to become the next priestess? Because that's how priestesses came about. Priests, we were the firstborn of of these beautiful sacred rites, and we got given back to the temple, right? So they could have another baby for themselves. Or, the couple might say, we got our baby. Here's a cow to sacrifice on behalf of our family. Thank you so much for our baby. We're ready to go home now with what we have. But that's how we handled a woman who was barren. That's mind blowing to us because it does take us back to the handmaid's tale in a way, doesn't it? This very kind of old way of dealing with, well, she can't, but she can. So let's bridge this. Let's work with it. But in temple times, again, because of how priests and priestesses were born into that work, there was an understanding that this was not cheating and it's not even polyamory. This is a sacred right. This is a sacred way to connect with the divine in an embodied way, not conceptual, embodied way. I now get to take in divine energy, take it back home with intention, put it there with intention, literally plant a seed that is now wrapped in divine juice and it's going to take. People didn't doubt it. They didn't doubt that. Just like, oh, it needs to rain. We need crops. Somebody go to the high priestess and tell her we need rain. And the high priestess would go, okay, and she'd go lay with the high priest. Almost all of the things we wanted to impact in simple time we did through eroticism, pleasure, touch, and intimacy. It was just natural for us. We were watching the animals do it, and we figured out, well, we're just an animal on two legs. Let's do that too. And it worked. And dare I say, it worked until the church came and told us we were wrong, dirty, filthy heathens. No, tear it all down, cover it all up. You need a building. You can't just be outside under the open sky. For God's sake, put clothes on, cover up your breast. You're not an animal. Go over there, disconnect, separate yourself. And if you want something to happen, you have to pray to our God. Oh, you're not able to have a baby? That's because God doesn't like you. Oh, it's not raining? You pissed off God. Wow. Well, I still have soul memory of, no, we can actually connect with the divine. This isn't about God being mad at us. We're not being punished.
I also have memories of, it makes so much sense now too, because I kept thinking that I was trying to get memories of like one single timeline, and finally I realized they were clips from various timelines.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the timelines wasn't just coupling like you suggested, although I also have the memory of that. I also have the memory of having like temple priests, like just like you said. but I also remember the body as oracle. I remember
Mm.
being an ecstatic and purposely and intentionally creating altered states, and then being able to go into the body and read the body's signals as prophecy and oracle too, and
Yes,
rituals of anointing and
yes,
cleansing, and like kind of like
yes,
handmaids or ladies in waiting that would anoint
yes,
my body and like help to keep me in my arousal state so that I was in
yes,
constant, like say in constant connection with the cosmos.
yes. So this is the world I live in today. As a shaman and medicine woman, the way my path has led me, this is pretty much how I live. And to the point where people go, "What do you even do? What do you do all day?" And I go,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
but from the time I wake up and light my altar to the time I go to bed and light that other altar, because my kids will tell you, which altar? There's altars everywhere, right? Um, it is about being in my body in such an erotic, ecstatic way, from the food I eat to the liquids I put in, to the way I move, the music I turn on, right? The way I move through the woods outside. All of it is designed to not only have me be present to what's happening in and around my body, but be able to interpret its signals. And that's my mantra is my body is my fiercest ally in life. And that's where it comes from. My answers are going to
Yes.
come from my body. But can I be connected and inside to receive?
And you can also use the body as the instrument to influence your reality. So we're using it,
Mm.
like you said, as a reading the reality, and we're also using it to influence the reality. I didn't know I was going to share this, but let me tell you something really juicy. I met someone recently at a group guided medicine journey. I had never taken San Pedro, went and took San Pedro. He
Mm.
had also never
Yeah.
taken San Pedro. First time for him, although he has more experience in psychedelics than I do. So when we met, it was just pre container. We met, everyone was mingling and meeting
Hmm.
each other, and we both
Hmm.
looked from across the room and instantly recognized each other. So we go to meet, we go to like give each other a hug, and we get about 3 feet from each other and realize we don't know each other in this lifetime.
I actually
We
don't
don't
know
actually
you.
know each other. Yeah. So then that was funny. So then we hugged or whatever, and then in general the group was getting to know each other, and I found myself like finding it very, it was so hard to resist touching him as if I knew him.
Mm.
And so I just
Mm.
confessed. I'm like, I you're going to see me like go to reach out to touch your leg and then pull my arm back because I realized we don't actually know each other. And I think in the third time where we both were having kind of that moment, we both just said, it's clearly a past life connection. And so like within an hour of
Hmm.
knowing each other, we're like, it must be a past life connection. So
Mm.
then we go through this, we go through the ceremony together, and it's a long ceremony, San Pedro. And so like we went through the first 3 or 4 hours on our own, that which was we were advised to do. And then there's like a second round. And I chose not to up the
Mm.
medicine. I was still feeling the medicine, but he upped the medicine.
Hmm.
And I slipped in. I remember like laying down and like kind of just turning on my side, and he was next to me, and he was looking at me, and he reached out his hand. And so we held
Mm.
hands for a little while, and we did energy play while we were there. But all that aside, afterward we got to know each other more, and we were doing energy play, and he has a story of childhood inappropriate interaction as well. And
Hmm.
what's so interesting about that is I'm uniquely positioned to help him through that, to move that trauma
Mm.
through his body because of my
Mm.
experience of the trauma in my body, but more than that, because of my experience of these lifetimes of doing this priestess work. And so I'm actually
Yeah.
scheduled to meet with him in January, and we're very specifically going to be, meeting in an erotic space specifically to do the work of moving that trauma that out of his cellular memory. But here I am. I'm just realized in our conversation, like I'm doing that good work,
Yes.
right
Yes.
now. It's just not in the context of like a formal temple where he would bring an offering or
Yes.
whatever. It's just different than that.
Yes. Oh, it's beautiful. That is so juicy. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. I
I'm
I've
so
had
excited.
yes, like I've had so many similar experiences, and it has confirmed and affirmed for me. y- You did it then, you're doing it now. This is a path. This is a path of healing. It may have been hidden, it may have been villainized, but it is still a viable path of healing, especially when we experience trauma at that place, that rupture at that place. The repair is also at that place, right? And that I
Yeah.
think that's something that we've been afraid of is I ruptured here, but let me go talk about it there. Ooh. But it's a bit like how does that, I'm gonna butcher it, but how does it go? You drop your keys at night and you're looking everywhere except for the place you dropped them. You know, like why don't you go back to where it ruptured? Go back to where it fell apart, and that's where you're gonna put it back together.
Yeah, it feels like such a privilege to help him bring home this fragmented piece of himself that he has judged all this time. And because like my experience and perhaps like yours, like he has erotic fantasies that don't feel appropriate for the circumstance. And so it truly feels like a divine appointment and a privilege to meet with him and walk him to the other side of this piece of himself that deserves his love and and reintegration. So I feel uniquely poised, and it feels like God's work. That's what it feels like to me.
Yes, yes. Look, I say it, and I say it jokingly, but it's not a joke. We are out here doing the Lord's work, truly, really and truly. So that leads me to, we
Yeah.
talk about meeting in a social setting, connecting in an intimate way. That loops me back to the Austin Tantra Festival. I've never been to a
Mm,
Tantra Festival. So, what is it like? Because there's what my brain is telling me it's like, but I'm pretty sure that's
yeah.
not what it's like.
Yeah, and it was my first Tantra festival too. So what's so funny is that in the kink and BDSM communities, there's a sub community called the leather, the leathermen and
Yes,
leather women. All the leather
yes,
people are like, Sharon, you're leather, and I'm like, I'm not. I mean, I don't follow like part of the social group, but everyone says I'm leather. And so Tantra's the same way. Like I've been in and out of Tantra for the last decade or more,
yes,
and everyone says you're Tantra, and I'm like, well, okay, I'm not, in that I don't advocate like trying to teach it to anybody, but
yeah, yep,
everybody insists that I'm Tantra too. So like whatever that
yeah.
means. But here in the States, and especially here in California, Tantra tends to mean what is actually neo Tantra. So Tantra is like
Mm-hmm.
is a super like archaically old philosophy, closer to more like Buddhism or Taoism.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
outside of the Western United States or the West, the Tantra is a larger philosophy that's taught as a larger philosophy, yoga of which is like one of the arms of Tantra.
Mm-hmm.
Here it tends to be about energetic sex. So the Austin Tantra Festival was straddling a little bit of the broader philosophy, and certainly was also
Ooh.
focused on the energetic sex portion of it. So as far as what it looked like, there were 3 classes going on at any one time. And like the 2 that I gave, one was about forbidden alchemy, about the forbidden and how you can use that as medicine. My second class was about pleasure as technology, and talking about pleasure as a
Mm-hmm.
frequency and why it's a more potent carrier wave for manifestation, why it is a technology through which we find our dharma and unlock our consciousness. Other classes were like how to be a divine lover. There was one
Mm-hmm.
on polarity, like that, not even specifically like polarity play, like it has to be a guy and a girl, but like polarity exists in every moment of every day. And
Mm-hmm.
polarity exists in our conversation right now. And we're naturally flowing and yielding and leading naturally between us. There's always 100% of the container of that polarity, and sometimes I'm 50% and sometimes I'm 30 and sometimes I'm 80, and you and I are moving and dancing in that field. So the Tantra Festival, it also had vendors that were a little kind of more festival like. They had festival kind of clothing. There were people that were creating homemade like hormonal tinctures that were good for libido or good for hormones. There were other people selling like leisure wear style clothing that you might wear to like a tantra party or a tantra gathering, that were a little more about meditation. And then they had other areas too. There, I liked how they were thoughtful to people that might need a break from all of the stimulation. And so
Mm-hmm.
there was like an area where somebody had brought their whole reading library. There's sort of like erotically balanced reading library. They also had this wonderful board. I think they called them love letters, and they had every facilitator name was on this board. It was an envelope that was on the board with their name on it. And so at any time during the festival weekend, you could write a note to any one of the facilitators that you
Aw.
wanted to get to know, or wanted to tell them how their class was, or if you didn't get a chance to talk with them, and you could sign it or not sign it. And so at the end, we all got this envelope that was full of like beautiful notes of admiration and acknowledgement that I thought was really beautiful. And then as far as
Mm-hmm.
like active play, I'm aware that there were some workshops where it was a clothing optional workshop. So I wasn't a part of those because I was giving my own classes, but I know that then there was what was considered a play party on the Saturday night of that weekend, and it was
Mm-hmm.
called Conscious Connections. And I did attend that, and it was certainly sexy clothing. You could be clothing op. It was clothing optional, and then they walked you through a bunch of group energetic exercises to bring the whole
Mm-hmm.
collective into a more similar frequency together, and like actively moving energy even in the same direction. They were very clear about like removing the energy in a counterclockwise direction. They stepped us through moving through the chakras and colors, and that was super cool. And then we did some connection games to get to know each other and break the ice. And one of them was, there were four of us by this time. We had collected in little groups of four, and we had to find something that all four people would be a yes to participate in together for 15 minutes. So in our group, we all agreed that that a couple people wanted like massage touch, and everybody was great with good conversation. And so there were two of us that wanted massage and two of us that wanted to give massage, and then all four of us were talking while we delivered that touch. So and then from there, it broke up into four areas that represented the elements: earth, air, wind, and fire, or earth, air, water, and fire. And they gave a demonstration of what the energetic current of that particular area and element was. So if you were on the earth set of mattresses, it was meant to be like massage and kind of like body weight and earthy touch. Fire was a little more primally, water was a little more liquidy and slower and a little more energetic and perhaps sensual. So I liked the format of the party. And of course, they talked about consent rules and things like that. So that was, I'm sure that was a highlight for many people over the weekend, besides the trainings and the education that they received as well. So that was my first tantra festival as well, and I liked the range of the conversation. They had hands-on workshops, they had ones that were all conversation and Q&A, and then the party was certainly a really wonderful anchor.
Mm. Ah, thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna go back. Similar to you, people have been telling me forever, you're Tantra, you're in the Tantra community. I'm like, no, I don't, that doesn't seem like me. Um, but it is because of my filter that here in the West, we have it focused on energetic sex. But my understanding of Tantra is that broader aspect. And so when people come and say you're Tantra, I'm like, oh, there's more, there's more. And as we talked about before, boy, do I love adult play parties. I'm sex positive all the way, right? And I'm
Oh, by
aware
the
that
way,
Tantra
I'll
provides,
I'll just give the caveat. There was no sex, no oral sex, and no penetrative sex at all at the party. There was definitely limitations
wow,
because of the place where it was
yeah,
hosted. So that actually felt better for me as a facilitator, being
yeah,
present with
yeah,
people that were
yeah,
attending. So like I was like debating on whether to go or not, but then when I found out there is
yeah,
no actual sex at the party, I felt like, okay, it feels appropriate enough for me to
yes,
be there.
yes. Thank you for putting that in. You know, we talked a little bit about my own experience with play parties. I'm someone who I like to experience the experience, but I don't necessarily want penetrative sex. I really love, as we talked about, the energy that's available. Just we talked about, and we're going to circle back because I want to talk a little bit about pleasure as technology, right? Because this is where we kind of dig in there. But the opportunity to just connect so vulnerably and so authentically with someone without normal societal rules, but also feel that you're in a container that allows you
Yeah.
to really go, right? Without
Yeah.
strings attached or what if or what about, or kind of takes it off the table. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate
Yeah.
you
And
sharing because I love the idea that there is a community that is holding Tantra as this and that. It's not just this, it's and
yeah.
this.
And I know that, Tantra for many, many people, most people in my experience are coming from a background of having some sort of uncomfortable or bad experience in their past. And so they're coming into the
Mm,
Tantra
mm,
community in order to learn how to use their no and how to say no, or how to like
mm, mm,
speak better. Like, these are the boundaries in which you're allowed or not allowed to touch me. So most
mm,
people are coming from that point of view. And so it's a really wonderfully safe container for that. My story
mm,
was not that. When I first came into the Tantra community, I kind of like was still of the mindset that that's what I was there for, but I realized that's not what I was there
mm.
for. I was there to reclaim my yes without shame. And I
Ooh,
remember a
ooh, ooh,
pivotal
ooh.
Tantra party, yeah, a Tantra gathering that I went to that was considered a red party. So Tantra, if your
Mhm,
followers don't know, have white, pink, and red style parties. White would be just like a lecture or a teaching. Pink would have some sort of erotic touch available. It's always an invitation, never forced. And then red would be like an all out anything goes kind of party. And I went to this red party very specifically because I was like, tonight I am practicing my yes. Obviously I have a no
mm.
if there's something I really don't want to do,
Yes,
but
yes,
otherwise
yes.
I'm going to say yes to everything
Mm,
somebody asks of me. And better yet, I'll ask
mm,
myself for that thing.
mm,
And so very similar setup with like the energy synchronization and then breaking up into groups. And I was with two gentlemen
mm,
and myself, and they, again, the same assignment was, what would the three of you be willing to do first, and kind
mm,
of let the play move from there. And so they both offered me touch. So one of them offered to massage my feet, and the other one had me put
mm.
my head in his lap, and he was massaging my head. And that's a great way to break to break the ice
Yes.
for me. So I said yes to those things, and then it was like one after the other. It was like, would you like me to take your dress off? Yes. Would you like me to touch your
Mm,
pussy? Yes. Would you like me to put my
yes,
mouth on your pussy? Yes. And it was like, it was
yes,
so beautiful because I was still working on the ask. Like, that the ask might have felt like a little
yes,
too much for me. So God bless them for
yes.
asking such lovely, beautiful, naughty
Direct.
things of
Yes,
me. And by the and
yes.
I ended up with 5 men and me, and they were hands everywhere, mouths everywhere, pleasuring me. And I was astounded at the idea that these beautiful men would be so generous
Mm,
in like the
mm,
sharing of my body, and the co-creation of
mm,
like this incredible amount of pleasure that they were delivering to me. and
mm,
and I'll say that when the scene was over, when it kind of naturally came to a close, I had cracked open and expanded so widely in that
mm.
time that when I came back into my body, I like fully contracted. I was done for the night. I
Ah,
had to put my clothes
yes,
on. I
yes.
didn't want to like
Yep,
even I didn't want to look at anybody. I
yes,
was like, "Oh
yes.
my God, was that okay?" Like, I had such an
Oh,
integration period of time after that, after saying yes to
yeah,
so much joy and pleasure. It was a
yeah,
remarkable. And it's in the second book. The book
yeah,
that's coming out in February talks about
yeah.
that particular scene and
Mm,
how transformative it was
mm,
for me. So I have a
mm.
great heart for the Tantra community, regardless of whether they're teaching the
Mm.
broader philosophy or whether it's Neo Tantra, because
Or
it has been, yeah, it has been a landscape for me that has been deeply supportive in my own journey.
mm. So good. So good. Thank you for that. You You're reminding me of an experience I had similar, but mine was me and all women, right?
Yeah. Oh,
But
super hot.
that was amazing. But again, that brilliant cracking open and expansion, and then being filled to the brim beyond what I possibly thought I could ever hold. My capacity was immediately expanded beyond. And then when I came back, because I came back into my body, right? Because I was one with the universe, and then I came back into
Yeah.
my body, like, oh, well, I think I'm done. Got what I came for. And yeah, the party's still going, but I'm
Yeah.
complete. I got what I came for. Um,
Yeah.
Back to pleasure as technology, because that's where I really began to get in touch with. It is my birthright to experience pleasure like this at all times. It might not be me and 5 or 6 women, but I do get to have this experience of pleasure. I do get to say yes. And in the saying of yes, my life gets to expand and expand. And along those same lines, I was just sharing with someone yesterday. We don't talk enough in the spiritual community about expansion and contraction. We love to think we're just going to ascend, 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 expand, expand, expand. We forget that life is a natural ebb and flow. And so, whenever you have anything that's transformative, whenever you have something that's just life changing, there is a natural state of contraction that follows. And so I'd love to have us dialogue a little bit about pleasure as a technology and what it looks like to expand and contract as you're having pleasure be your tool to either receive your dharma, right? Or just experience the fullness of your own self, like who you came here to be.
Yeah. I mean, you said it so well. It's like a breath, and that you
Mm,
have to give you have to give your body the chance to exhale as much
mm,
as it needs to inhale. And that the flow between the expansion and contraction, as much as we can smooth the journey of those extremes out, that's where I think the magic kind of lands, and you're sitting in the flow of what life has to
mm,
offer you.
mm,
And because even, what's been my experience recently, I can tell that, like, I think we talked about this last time, but that slogan of "you are the god of the game," right? This video game,
mm,
our body is
mm,
the console, and it's our job to
mm,
learn it, and that our
mm,
pleasures are the cheat codes. And what I've been
mm,
experiencing recently is a refinement, or a fine tuning of my actual perception of sensation or pleasure.
mm,
So, like, I was watching, an
mm.
example would be, gosh, I got a few of them. So my first example is I had a crush on I realized I had a crush on somebody. This was just before meeting the other gentleman who I'm going to be working with. And I had a crush on him, and ultimately I asked him out, and he said no thank you. I asked him for a cuddle date. He said no thank you. And what happened was I didn't take a hit from his no. And
Mm, mm.
I could just sit in the
Yep.
lusciousness of the feelings of
Mm,
the crush and just be fed. I mean,
mm,
like, my mouth is watering, remembering, literally, like right now as I'm
mm,
remembering. And similarly,
mm,
I had the experience of the gentleman that I'm talking about, who I'm going to be meeting up with for the healing. He was scheduled right after we met for that medicine journey. He was scheduled to be in Austin the same weekend that I was going to be there.
wow.
So we're like,
Wow.
that's wild. He lives in Arizona, I live in California, so we're not even in the same state. So it seemed like divine intervention that we were going to both be in Austin. And so we kind of assumed we would be able to, like, get the schedules to work and get the distance to work to meet up. So we talked about it. It was a beautiful flirtation, and the language and the anticipation was really juicy. And in the end, we weren't able to meet. But again, I didn't take, and there was no, like, there was a
Mm,
moment of, well, darn, that would have been even juicier. But otherwise,
yeah.
we were both so filled and fed by just the
Mm,
charge that we were
mm,
delivering and participating in between us, that we didn't need it to be consummated in any particular way. We could literally
mm.
be like, I keep getting this image of a straw, like, like, or like
Yeah.
sucking up the last piece of spaghetti, like,
Yeah.
And then
Yes.
lastly, the third one that I've experienced lately that also is relevant is I was watching this cooking tournament. It's like a Korean cooking tournament. I love cooking shows and cooking tournaments. And these Korean
Me
judges, I
too.
mean, they take a bite that's nearly the size of my fist. Like it's a huge spoon, and they fill their mouth with food. And you watch them like grind on this
Mm,
on this food, and like sometimes stuff's dripping down their mouth a little bit, and like, and I am watching their faces with like rapt anticipation for like the smallest little like smile
mm,
or response,
mm,
because I know if like I know one of them is like a super difficult judge, like he's super judgy, and he's a fine dining
mhm,
chef, and but if he cracks
mm,
a little smile, if he has that little dimple goes up, you know he's been surprised by something, and I cannot fucking
mm,
wait like for his evaluation of what he's eating. And between them you can see the communication, nonverbal mostly, going on between the two judges as they both have a similar or dissimilar experience of this bite of food. And
mm,
my entire body is responding to theirs. And clearly
mm.
there's like some mirroring neurons going on about that, but
Yes.
mostly it's
Yes.
because I am in full presence. I'm bringing all of my
Mm,
body, all of my sensory input, all of my perceptual awareness to what I'm watching in order to like just literally like
mm.
as much
Yeah.
as I can
Yes.
from the vicarious experience of those judges. So like that's
Mm,
my experience more recently. It's like a fine tuning of this perceptional ability to just take in what's happening
mm,
in my bubble.
mm. I love that. There's a lot of power there when we talk about, especially talk about being centered.
Mm,
It's like when we can experience life just the way it is without having to add anything to it or take anything away. There's just
mm.
power. There's just power. And that's what I
Yeah, there.
that's what I hear. I feel like that's gold.
Yeah, you're right. It's all what I'm interpreting your messages is that it's all already here. And so it's
Yeah. Yes.
it
Yes.
the more we want to experience of life, the juicier and more rich we want to have the experience of this reality. It's about unlocking that perception and slowing the mind, tuning into the body, and not just the body, right? Because there's also like vibrational signals and energetic
Mm,
signals that aren't actually physically tangible, but they are tangible somehow too. Like the intangible is
mm-hmm.
tangible. And so like again, like
Mm-hmm.
turning your little satellite dishes out or in the right way so that you're picking up on all of these signals that are already present. And it's just a
Mm,
matter of how much are you willing
mm,
to tune in to the beauty, to the deliciousness, to the sensory aliveness of the moment.
mm, mm, mm. I'm not gonna add anything to that. That's where we're gonna end because that's perfect. That's what
Yeah.
I want everyone to be like.
Yeah.
That. That.
I'm teaching them
Mm,
how. I'm teaching people how. I'm writing these amazing articles, I have to say, on Substack. You know, if any of your followers want to come
mm.
and get a free subscription on my Substack, there's a paid one too where I do give
Yes.
actually embodied experiences on how to do this kind of stuff. But I'll tell you, those articles on Substacks are divinely channeled, guided messages, and they're super
Mm.
juicy.
Remind us where we can find you out there
Yeah, thank
on the
you.
world wide web.
Yes, my
Mm,
website is sharonmariescott.com. You can also find my name on Substack. My platforms on other things is usually Life Turned on YouTube, on TikTok.
mm,
Again, Life Turned On is my channel on Substack. Yeah, look me up on all those places. My website, you can get on my newsletter. I've got other podcast interviews, of which these ones will go up on my press and
mm,
media page as well. So lots of beautiful blog articles up there. And yeah, get in touch. I'm also have this program
mm,
that I put together for the spring called the Pleasure Frequency. And it's a 12-week program
mm,
where I teach my private temple practices in the first 6 weeks. The seventh week is an actual in-person retreat out here in San Diego,
mm,
California. And then there's 4 weeks of integration, because so many of these programs that people learn are meant to activate them, and then they get abandoned. And a lot of them
yeah.
lose the
Yep.
frequency that they've learned to hold. And so this program takes you from start to finish, that like kind of like a video game. By the end of the 12 weeks, it's like a checkpoint. You can't fall back
Yes.
underneath the
Yes.
frequency once
Mm.
you finish the program. So yeah, thanks for giving me a place to talk about all that. I'm super excited about it.
Yes. Oh my gosh, my pleasure. So I would love to have you back. Uh, we're at the end of December. I live in a perpetual time warp, but I would love for us to come back in January and maybe talk specifically about that program as you gear up for the spring. And maybe you can introduce us to some
Yeah.
little bits here and there, and then
Yeah.
keep us in the conversation of pleasure as technology, right?
Hmm.
I think that'd be brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Awesome.
Let's do that. I love it.
Sharon,
I,
thank you so much for being with us again. And thank you for being willing to come back again. I'm having so much fun. And I know that everybody listening is like, we
same.
want more.
Yeah.
We want more.
Fantastic. I'm into.
So,
I love it. I love the conversation. Until next time.
awesome. Until next time, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for rocking with us till the end. And we'll see you on the next episode.